But I'm excited. This is going to be a good one. Okay, good. I see the green dot, which means my microphone's getting picked up. Okay, so we're back. Okay, so this I'm pumped for this one. This is going to be a lot of fun. So we're talking about, in my opinion, the root causes of disease. There's three main ones, in my opinion. So, and we're going to dive, pretty deep into this over the next, 20, 30 minutes here. So if you're ready to learn, hope you brought some notes. It's going to be fun. Before we get into it really quick, I'm really excited to announce that I just launched my Inside Out Detox Masterclass. Now, if I've been talking about it for the last couple weeks, this is something that I am incredibly proud of. I've basically put in, all of the information that I've learned over the past, I don't know, 7, 8 years, used to get my own health back on track. So just a little bit, because I know I don't talk about myself too much on these channels, but back in the day when I was in college, when I was in chiropractic school, I was um, I weigh about 165 pounds right now. When I was playing a sport, when I was a collegiate athlete, I was around 195. And in my estimation at the time, I always thought like, oh, I was working out more. It was muscle mass. Never mind the fact that I was developing like crazy brain fog. I never had coffee before I went to college. I was having all these gut issues. There would be days where I wouldn't go to the bathroom. My energy levels were terrible. And, I relied on coffee. I basically just numbed it. And it wasn't until years later that I started learning a little bit about nutrition. I learned about detoxification, and I've been employing these practices with everyone I work with. So to some degree or another. So, um, and I've been doing this in a variety of ways. Usually it's been in a one-on-one setting where we would customize everything to the person. And that is still, an option. So I still take on new folks. I can work with anyone, wherever. That's the beauty of living during this time. But the benefit of that is I've been able to learn a lot about nutrition. I've been able to learn a lot about disease, and I've been able to essentially heal myself. Seasonal allergies too. That was a big thing. Gone within a year, or the next time the allergy season came around, no allergies. So what you can do is pretty amazing if you stick to it, if you understand how the body works, if you understand, what you could do. Now, I put all of this information because it is so confusing to go through all these videos. It is so confusing to parse it all out. It's all broken up into 10 hours of video over 8 weeks with a 3-week detox program in there. So if you want to follow that, you can do that. You could learn how to scale it up if you really want to reach those high levels, or you can scale it down if you're not ready for that or you want to go slower. I incorporate and give you all of my favorite herbal remedies that I use with my patients and clients. Now, how I give that, for what I use them for which category. I like different antimicrobials and type stuff, so I give you all of my favorite ones for that. How to support the gut, general support. All of that's there. My first aid kit. So if you deal with the healing crisis, you understand what that is, how to go about it. And the best part is it's not a membership. It's not, you have to come back over and over again. I like doing a cleanse personally, like once quarter around the changes of seasons. I think that's a great way to keep yourself healthy, keeping your bowels healthy, because your bowels are essentially the connector for every other organ in your body, right? So that to me is really important. And I go through kind of all my methods, how I do it, how you can do it at home. And honestly, I've never been more proud of something that I've done. And I think anyone who takes that investment in their health, again, you do it once, and you have it for as long as that website is up. You will have access to it, and you could download all the PDFs. You come back to it over and over again. So if you really are serious about healing and getting into it and want to learn the why and the how, that's what it's about. Okay, I'm done. I hope you're interested. You can check it out. Links in my bio. If you want to work with me, the links in my bio. Let's get into what are the three root causes of disease here. Now, this is a big one because it might not be necessarily what you think. But you hear me talk about a lot, like what the main issues are: physical, chemical, emotional stress. Now, I talk about that all the time. Those are the things that are going to take you out of balance, out of homeostasis, that's going to cause the body to react in some way. And in a lot of ways, you can talk about our health is our ability to adapt, to be resilient to different situations. So it's not necessarily that you avoid everything that's going to throw out of homeostasis. It's more when you are in a new environment, how do you adapt to it in real time? That is ultimately what is the marker of true health, in my opinion. And what causes that, again, stress brings 80 to 90% of all doctors' visits are stress, physical, chemical, or emotional stress. Now, what we call disease, I think, comes down to three factors. And the first one you might think is a little bit surprising, but hear me out on that because I'm going to get into it. So there's three. And the second two are much more important than the first, but the first I think is incumbent because of the second two. So we have inherent weaknesses, which is somewhat genetic. We also have inherent strengths, acidity, and toxicity. Three. That's it. In my opinion, inherent weaknesses, acidity, and toxicity, and especially the last two, account for, I would say, 97 to 99% of all disease that we see today. Full stop, period. It's that simple. Health does not need to be super complicated. It doesn't need to be super complex. But what we do need to understand is how this stuff works. And the best way to understand how this stuff works is by understanding how nature works. And what we have seen as human beings is we have slowly just distanced ourselves further and further and further and further away from nature. And the further we get away from nature, we see this. We spend more money on healthcare than anyone else in the United States or in the world. The United States does. And we have the worst health outcomes of any industrialized country. Why is that? It's not because we don't have more, we're not more technologically advanced. It's because we're going about this the wrong way. We're in this germ theory crazy model that just needs to go out the window. So again, inherent weakness, acidity, toxicity. Let's get into all three. Let's start with the inherent weaknesses. And this is the one that I've talked about more in the past. You've probably heard me be very vocal about it. And this is where, in my opinion, I think iridology has really been helpful, because iridology to me has been able to bridge the gap as to what is potentially weak in this person, and where those potential gaps could be person to person. So most people, if you don't know, the eyes are actually nervous tissue. It's connected to the brain via the optic nerve. It connects directly to the brain. And the eyes and the gut are some of the first um, organs to form in the embryonic stage. So during fetal development, the eyes and the gut are some of the first to change. And what we've learned, through iridology, which, by the way, has been practiced for thousands of years in a variety of different cultures, you are able to pick up on certain inherent weaknesses or strengths in a person. Now, just because you might have an inherent weakness does not necessarily mean that it will manifest in your life in real time. In fact, I usually see it the other way around. I will see people who have strong genetic resilience, and you could see this in the fiber weaves. They're very tight together. But what you'll see is these people, because they're so resilient, they beat the crap out of themselves, whether it's through poor diet, whether it's through sleep, whether it's through a job they hate, or toxic food or toxic relationships, and they literally push themselves to the edge where they finally become weakness. Now, inherent weaknesses, like it these are things that, again, are passed down to a degree, but are they activated? That is mostly due to us. You might have a predisposition to something, but there is no guarantee in life that that will ever be activated. What iridology can do is help pick up what those might be, but it doesn't tell you if something is actively happening at the moment. And that's the difference. So it does not mean that it will necessarily manifest in symptoms, but what it does mean is there are certain areas that are more um, predisposed or likely to become an issue compared to others. And why is this an issue today? It's because what we're seeing now is folks who at a rate never before seen, more people are consuming and injecting toxins at rates that literally were not even existent 100 years ago. And what we're seeing now is cancer in kids, in teens, birth deformities at rates that we just don't see. And we're starting to see this in iridology as well. We're seeing more of these weaknesses, and these are largely due to, again, lifestyle factors of the parents that are then passed down to the kids. And that's how the cycle continues. Now, it goes the other way. You can actually become more resilient over time. It can go the other way. But in this modern world, like, you have to remember, we're living in a world now where it's expected that 1 in 2 people are going to potentially get cancer. So that is not ideal. That is not exactly a recipe for success. And we're looking around like, I don't know what the cause is. Well, there's not one cause, there's multiple, and it's an entire systemic failure at this point. And unless enough people are going to stand up and do something about it, it's going to be an issue. Now, where these weaknesses tend to be are usually in the glands, i.e., the endocrine system, hormones. So you're talking about the pituitary, you're talking about the pineal gland, you're talking about thyroid, adrenals, sex hormones, sex organs. So, ovaries, uterus, testicles, adrenals, like all of these are the areas that are hit the most. And you can actually see this in the eyes. So when I am working with someone and we're going through, some of these pictures, we can point this stuff out, and you can see how it matches up with how that person's feeling at a given time. And you start, putting some of these pieces together that way. So, cells and tissues become stronger or weaker depending on, the genetics and one's lifestyle. So, and that's, again, what you eat, what you drink, what you breathe, what you put on your skin, but also what you think and what you feel. So, and a lot of it too becomes in between the ears here. I cannot tell you the amount of times who people will justify making poor decisions by, oh, well, my mom had breast cancer when she was 51. That means I'm going to get it. So why not just have a seventh drink tonight? That is literally the justification you use to have poor habits. And you wonder why these things then manifest in the next generation. It's not because we're told essentially a lie from the beginning that you are predetermined to get this because mom or dad or grandma or uh, you know Uncle Joey or whoever had this issue. And if we need to take a step out of that world and realize that the closer we get to nature, the more input we have, the more that we actually put into it. And the more we get closer to that, the more we, get into more raw fruits and vegetables, more hydrating foods, we get more in touch with nature, and that spiritual aspect becomes more relevant. And what happens is, we're told this lie, we're told we're all random when none of this is actually true. These are eventually going to be, I think, major karmic debts that are going to have to be paid up in future lives for those who are told, well, there's nothing you can do. It's in your genetics. We're all random. We're all just randomly spinning on a globe in the middle of the world, the middle of the universe. And no, like, there's intention and there's reason behind all of it. And just because we don't understand it does not necessarily mean it doesn't exist. And the sooner we realize that, the closer we come to nature, the closer we interact with it, with what we put in our mouths, what we put in our bodies, what we put on our bodies, the closer we'll get to health and the closer we actually get to the truth. And that's ultimately where it's at the end of the day. So inherent weaknesses are there, but you have to also realize that we can actually change inherent weaknesses into strengths in the future if we don't live by the lie that everything we do is determined by our genes. And that's why it made the list. Now, number 2 is acidity. Now, acidity is always a tricky one because some people will use this and take it to the extreme where they'll use it to sell like alkaline water and stuff like that, which honestly does nothing to help you. And we're going to get into why. And the goal is balance. And this is where, again, traditional Chinese medicine, I think, is closer than any other um, modality or concept, I guess, that I can think of. And the reason why is there's always a balance, a harmony between two things. In Chinese medicine, you have yin and yang. It isn't that one is better than the other. It's that there's always a struggle, not even a struggle, a strive for balance between the two. And there isn't a perfect. It's always a weave. It's always, bobbing and weaving and flowing, almost like water. And the more we realize that, like, we have to find balance more so than do one thing all the way, then the closer we're actually going to get in touch with our spiritual beings, in my opinion, but also in how we get in touch with nature and in touch with our health, because we're always looking to go one thing. This is a very American or conventional medicine model. Is if one thing's enough, then we have to hammer it all the way home again and again and again until we overdo it. You overload the system. A lot of medications are acidic, so let's get into it. So there's an interplay, there's a movement, and chemistry. Like, again, you have acids and bases, so that's where this concept comes from, acidity. Now, the elements that make up matter are either acidic or alkaline in nature. Your acidic ones are more your nitrogen, phosphorus, and sulfur. Your alkaline ones are usually your electrolytes, so potassium, sodium, um, magnesium, calcium. Interesting, the acid forming one. So, and this is something that we know, and we get into this a lot. This is why high protein diets become an issue, because what makes a protein different from a carbohydrate or a fat is the introduction of, if we go back to chemistry, nitrogen. That is by definition like what makes a protein versus a carbohydrate, is that molecular structure. It includes nitrogen based compounds. Those are your amino compounds, right? So, and we know if we are in high amounts of those cause kidney damage. This is well documented. This is not, made. This is what happens when you do this over a long period of time. So what happens here? So first of all, what is pH? pH is the measure of acidity or alkalinity in a solution, and it's based on a scale from 0 to 14, where 0 is the most acidic and 14 is the most alkaline or basic, and 7 is neutral. Now, what's interesting here is, if you don't know, it's a logarithmic scale. So for example, if we have a pH of 7 and a pH of 8, it's not, 8 isn't, twice as much basic as 7, or only 1 point. It's actually 10 times. So going from a pH of 7 to 9 would be 100 times more basic. So it's a logarithmic scale. Now, blood, what we know is it, and we have, certain fluids in our body. Obviously, one of them is blood. And blood has a very tightly regulated pH, and that is around 6. You'll see it as 7.4, or you'll see it more specifically at 7.365. Now, here's the deal. If you go too high acidic or too low acidic, too highly acidic or low pH, that's a better way to put it, below 6.8, or you go too high alkaline above 7.8, you're dead at both ends. That's when cells die, and ultimately you will die, is if we have an alkaline blood pH of over 7.8 or an acidic blood pH below 6.8. So it's a very tight range. And when we're talking about foods, foods can also be divided into acid or alkaline forming foods, and that's based on the ash that they create, after they are kind of burned down. And is it acid forming or is it alkaline forming? And again, the alkaline ones are going to be more your electrolytes. So where you find those are, again, going to be, especially in your fruits, vegetables. These are going to have more of those ions that you need for proper chemistry, right? So for that chemistry. But if we're too acidic, which is the most of the way that modern folks tend to live, that's going to be, again, this could lead to acid buildup in the body. What happens if we're taking the kidneys, for example? We get uric acid buildup. Now we're talking about gout. So if It can also lead to, it's a byproduct of actually meat metabolism and can lead to, fungal overgrowth as well. So it could be a fungal issue. And this comes the same thing with other acidic foods like dairy, like processed wheats that are super, super acidic. They cause a lot of stress on the body, a lot of inflammation. Not great. Now, if we're talking about, again, if we bring back the acidity part and we're talking about digestion, digestion, for the most part, is an alkaline actually process. So the only acidic chamber that humans have is the stomach, and that's where protein digestion takes place. The rest of the enzymes in the mouth, in the intestines, in the liver, in the pancreas, these are all going to actually raise the pH, make it more basic, so that we can actually create a more alkaline environment that's more suited to human beings. And again, we sit at a slightly alkaline environment. But the problem is when we're having such acidic lifestyles with negative emotions, with poor food intake, with high stress environments, this is going to lead to, again, issues with damaged blood vessels, poor oxygen absorption, poor kidney issues we talked about, immune issues, because if the lymph becomes acidic, then we're going to have issues cycling through toxins. That's going to be a big issue. Bone spurs, premature aging, joint pain, lactic acid buildup. If we cannot cycle that through the lymphatic system, lactic acid buildup, you're going to feel that. That's that soreness that you feel. So can we deal or can we get rid of that inflammation? So your itises, your cystitis, your nephritis, your tonsillitis, your arthritis, these are acidic, toxic buildups in the body. And again, how do we get through that? Again, it's a big part of it is going through either it is detoxification. That's ultimately the answer to this. And it's using a formula that you can go in and out of, that you can use when you need to heighten the detoxification process. So that's two. We have inherent weaknesses and we have acidity. The final one that we're going to talk about today is toxicity. And this is the big one. Now, we can go as micro, as we want to here. I'm going to try to not go super micro because we honestly have there are so many things like we were kind of talking about before. There are so many toxins that we're exposed to on a regular basis now, that it's inconscionable. And another reason why detoxification as a system needs to be something that I believe that is the system for treatment for the variety of things that we see today. Now, I love this EPA quote. I've used this all the time in posts. It's my favorite, but I will quote: "The average American has over 700 chemicals in his or her body, a terrible toxic burden, and one our bodies are ill-equipped to handle. Exposure to toxic chemicals and heavy metals is occurring at a level unprecedented in human history, triggering the development of devastating illnesses such as Alzheimer's disease, diabetes, autoimmune disease, and cancer." That's a direct quote from the EPA. It's one of my favorite quotes. I've used it in, again, posts online. I've used it in talks that I've given, because if we don't understand that these are government organizations that are aware of this and yet still talk about all of these things like we have no idea what causes them, then there's something going on in the messaging that's not adding up. And it's this ability to, one, eliminate as much or mitigate as much toxic exposure as we possibly can. And the other is to make sure the body's doing exactly what it can to get to a point where we can handle what the day-to-day life of being a modern day human can do. And we absolutely can do it. It's just going to take more work. It's going to take more effort. Just because the vast majority of people that we go walking around with, again, we were talking about lymph before, stagnant lymphatic drainage, likely aren't pooping every day, are super stressed out, getting, Big Macs at the drive-through. But like these are all things that are going to lead to an acidic, toxic environment that if we are not dealing with appropriately, it's going to lead to bigger issues down the road. So our ability to detoxify and our ability to cleanse and get the body working the way it should is ultimately what's going to separate, you from your neighbor who is having all these struggles with a lot of these things that we see. Now, there's a ton of different ones. Some of the big ones, I just have a list here. It's pesticide and herbicide use in the conventional food supply. Again, and this is something that's all the way up to the highest levels of the government and unfortunately the people who pay the government or who work with them. You're talking about big ag, big pharma. This is where all those tentacles kind of come in because they have essentially gotten us to a point where no one is being incentivized to grow organic food in regenerated soils, which is absolutely doable if the incentive structure just can change. And it's really sad to see, but like this is what's happening with the destruction of our soils. And if we don't fix it, it's going to be a lot of destruction for all of us. Home gardening, that's another place. So your Roundup, we've talked about glyphosate so many times, genetically modified foods in general. Nature is not going to make mistakes when it comes to this stuff. We know which foods are inherently available for us and which are best. Getting in the way of that is not good. And we've seen like when humans get in the way of the food supply, it leads to things that do not end well. Secondhand smoke or smoking in general, obviously super toxic. But how many years did it take for, modern or doctors to finally stop admitting that? It's crazy. Hormones, so xenoestrogens. So, fertility issues are an issue that, as far as I'm like, is an issue that is becoming more obvious now because of exposure to exogenous hormones in the food supply, in the things that you put on your skin. Because remember, what you eat, what you breathe, what you drink, and what you put on your skin ultimately becomes you. So if you're putting on endocrine disrupting chemicals every day, that is going to affect your ability to get pregnant. EMFs are a big thing. Radiation exposure. I'm actually trying to add something to this. EMFs can be an issue, a big reason, especially in men when we're talking about fertility issues and women. So, you know, putting, for example, your 5G cell phone in your bra strap, probably not a good idea. For guys, putting your cell phone in, your front side pocket, probably not a good idea when you're talking about fertility issues. Toxic metals, yes. Injections at rates that unfortunately we can't talk about too much, but absolutely, if you're injecting foreign substances that are known to cause inflammatory reactions, that's going to be an issue. Absolutely, that's going to be an issue. Um, Lead, asbestos, mercury, amalgam fillings. We've covered that before. Cleaning products have things like trihalomethanes and chlorinated hydrocarbons. Issues to this. Flame retardants in a lot of furniture. Phthalates, parabens in cosmetic products. All of these cause issues here. And it's really, really unfortunate. This is just an incredible toxic burden that no one's really had to deal with at this point. And yes, we are unfortunately in a situation where, we are paying a premium for organic foods, but until more people become, you know, aware of this and demanding better practices, these companies are not going to change. And unfortunately, that starts at the individual level, whether you like it or not. And it's going to take enough individuals demanding better quality assurance, not purchasing the junk, which is a big thing. Because if you're not purchasing the garbage products, they're going to stop making the garbage products. So that is how, this stuff starts. That's a big part of it. Drinking water. So, when I was in college or when I was in chiropractic school, one of those two, the Flint, Michigan issue was a huge thing. But you know what? Like we even know now, like in the regular, conventional water supply for a lot of folks, you're finding things like fluoride, not good, especially when you're talking about neurological function. Not great. heavy metals like arsenic and mercury, asbestos, glyphosate, endocrine disruptors, antibiotics have been found in drinking water. So if you're not using clean water, like please, it's worth it to invest, in a at least a drinking water filter. If you can find, a Berkey one, or you can find, I like clearly filtered. Reverse osmosis is all right. It's not ideal. If you can get access to spring water, um, that's great too. So, there's options out there, but really important because again, we're 70% water. We need to be having largely hydrated foods, right? And what are the hydrating foods? They're going to be largely a lot of different fruits, which we are, from what I've seen, when I took a comparative biology course, because in undergrad, unfortunately, they did not have a human anatomy course. So I had to take a comparative vertebrate anatomy and physiology class. We learned, hey, humans, they're a lot closer to the herbivores and the gorillas and monkeys, as far as digestive tracts are concerned, versus the cats who have digestive tracts that are very short and highly acidic because and they have claws and teeth that will shred skin. These are the things that we're adapted to. We're adapted to eat a lot of raw fruits and vegetables, like it or not. This is what our anatomy kind of shows. So that's the basis of this detoxification. Fluoride's a crazy one. We already know, like even the Lancet has shown that like it can lower your IQ. It calcifies the pineal gland, which is again, is that's going to affect your sleep? Absolutely. What's created in the pineal gland? It's melatonin, which is really responsible for putting us to sleep. Now, never mind, we have the fake lighting and the issues with that. That's going to be a huge, huge issue too. So, that's a big one when it comes to that. Plastics. Now, plastics we know are endocrine disruptors. They are going to affect your hormones in a variety of different ways. So that's a big one. BPAs, which are plastics, they're found in over 90% of Americans' urine. They're a known xenoestrogen, which means it acts like an estrogen in the body and could be toxic. So you're wondering why we're having fertility issues, especially in men. One reason for that is toxic exposure to plastics. So that's a big one. One thing you might want to watch out for now is a lot of these companies are replacing BPA with an offshoot that's called BPS, which at least the initial studies are showing are probably at least just as toxic, probably more. So, you got to be aware. And again, awareness is always the key. It's the start here. You have things like DEA and MEA and TEA. These are carcinogenic compounds that are found in shampoos and shaving creams and bubble bath. These are real issues here. So again, if you could put it on your skin, what gets absorbed ultimately becomes you to a degree. I like apps. I like the Think Dirty app. I like the Environmental Working Groups app, which is the Healthy Living app. I like an app, Yuka, that a friend turned me on to that I actually really enjoy, YUKA. Again, all these are free, in the App Store. One second. Gotta clear the throat a little bit. So all of these are major, major toxins. PFAS. So if you're cooking a lot, are you using something that has PFAS like Teflon? I talk about the movie Dark Waters all the time. If you haven't seen it, highly, highly recommend checking it out. Dark Waters, it's really good. I think what's his name? Mark Ruffalo is the lead actor, I guess. Fantastic. Worth a watch. These are, again, things that are going to stay in your body and cause issues. You're going to find these in your non-stick or your Teflon coated cookware. So really want to get on top of that, if you can. So that's a big one too. Digestion is going to influence all of these body functions, right? So a well-running digestive system is crucial for effectively absorbing, these nutrients here. And if it is a toxic environment, we're going to run into a lot of issues with toxicity, right? So it's a major issue. So, if digestion is not working properly, it's going to affect our ability to detoxify, and our ability to detoxify is crucial. Now we have the liver, we have the lymphatic system that are really responsible for this. And that's where a lot of this is going to get done. But if the toxicity and this mucus, this biofilm is built up in the tissues, in the gut, in fat tissue, in your sinuses, in your throat, in your glands, it's going to lead to an acidic, toxic environment. um when you experience these cold and flu like symptoms, this is actually the body trying to expel a lot of these issues that we're trying to get rid of. It's actually expelling. It's a way of detoxification. Breathing is a form of detoxification. So this is why deep belly breathing, and I talk about my breathwork course all the time. It's because so many people do not do the basics, and if we just did the basics, we'd be so much closer. Cold, flu, lymphatic system, so tonsillitis. These are issues that are called that show that there's acidity, there's toxicity that needs to be cleansed out, and we have to get our detoxification levels, our detoxification pathways up and running as best as possible. Detoxing is quick. Again, disease is only just a word. It's used by the medical community to just associate a bunch of different symptoms. And what we call disease is actually just a natural process that's experienced, by cells when there's excess toxicity, excess mucus, excess toxins from, injections, heavy metals, chemical exposure, toxic foods that results in inflammation. And we have to cycle this stuff out. And what we can do is regenerate and rebuild. And we use these things. So using more alkaline foods is key. Getting detoxification pathways up is key. Energizing the body is key. So, cleansing and detoxification, it's an art. So, like in the course, I talk about how to do this. Depending on where you're at, there is no perfect answer. It's a question of how far do you want to go up the chain or down the chain, depending on where you're at. And it can be intense because if you experience these cold and flu like symptoms, which is one of the things we were going to talk about in another video, which was the healing crisis, it can lead to symptoms that we call diseases, but it's actually just the body cleansing itself. And remember, like the process of bringing the body back into its blood pH, or closer to its blood pH without drawing our minerals from the bone bank. Because what happens is, if we're having an acidic lifestyle, whether you're vegan or not, if you're having a bunch of the fake vegan food, and all this processed junk, it's going to lead to an acidic environment. You go to the bone bank because that's where your minerals are, your electrolytes are, to pull them out. What are you left with? Osteoporosis. And this is the big thing. If we're not replenishing that, if we're not creating that buffer with the foods we eat, it's going to be an issue. So we need to stop living acidic lifestyles and getting more alkaline components in. And that starts with primarily fruits, especially fresh fruits. So that's a big start. Fresh fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds. That should be the primary, component here. Detoxing, but are we supporting those pathways? I love using herbal formulas to do that. Live Ton, Live Co are some of my favorites. As far as liver supports, I love Dermaco and Chelico. I love Chlorella. Burdock complex. All of these are really good for, again, liver or gallbladder, and those others, Burdock complex, Chelico, Dermaco, great for lymphatic drainage. Bananas are fantastic. The more bananas, the better. Seriously, love bananas. Absolutely. So all of those, great. And this will give you, the energy, the enzyme, because where you're going to get raw nutrition, raw enzymes, living enzymes from live raw foods. And that's how you get it. That's how you bring your body back into resilience. That's how you bring yourself back into true homeostasis. Oof. Went a little bit longer than I thought, but I hope that answers it. Now listen, I dive a lot deeper into all of this, in the Inside Out Detox Masterclass. Again, it's not a membership, it's not anything like that. You buy it once, you go through it, you can come back to it. I like going through, a true detoxification or cleanse once every quarter. Again, for me, like I said, I went from 195 today. I had to do it because of this. Is acne on the face from too much acidity? Absolutely. That's lymphatic backup. And you could actually see that in the eyes sometimes with a rim around the eyes. So that can absolutely do it. Again, from 195 to today, it was almost down to, I think, 163. Now, just from going through this, from making sure that I'm keeping my body in an alkaline state by really taking care of it, by making sure my drainage pathways are open on a regular basis. And I'm talking, sweating regularly, getting hydration, especially from raw fruits and vegetables, and using the herbal formulas where I see fit. Put all this together again in the course. It's going to be cheaper than working with anyone. I would say on this, even if you wanted to work with me, which we absolutely can. This is meant so you could come back to it again and again over the years, and you know, at the price point it's at, and it's for 122 for 4 months for 4 payments of 122, or one payment of 448. Again, you try finding a functional doc that's going to work with you for cheaper, that you're going to get this level of information from. Unlikely going to happen, or they're going to cost a lot more than that. So, that's what we got. I'm super excited. I hope you guys enjoy this course. Again, 10 hours of information, tons of material, and included as bonuses, by the way, are my essential oils guide, which is great. So my beginners to essential oils guide, because I love essential oils. Oh, and if you don't like it, you could use the link in my bio. So maybe not the one here. You're gonna have to like back out of this once this is over. Go to the link in my bio and check out the course. It is going to save you so much time and effort, instead of going to multiple places and wasting hours and hours of time trying to put it all together. No, it's all there in one place. And you come back to it again and again as you need it. This is why I do this. I do this because I love helping people, and I do it at a price point that I think is ideally, where you can get some value out of it, and it people are selling this for at least 10 times what I'm selling it, and I've seen it at that. So, you know, I hope you take advantage. I hope you guys have a lovely weekend. If you haven't checked out my ebook, by the way, too, you could learn a lot more about different herbs, herbal remedies, all fun stuff like that, too. I will see you guys next time. Much love. Have a great weekend.